I'm Lee C. Camp, and this is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life.
A lot of people will say, Carlos, life's speeding by us. Actually, I think we're the ones speeding by life.
That's author, speaker, and social media influencer Carlos Whittaker talking about his latest book, Reconnected, how 7 screen-free weeks with monks and Amish farmers helped me recover the lost art of being human.
I decided I'm not going to look at an iPhone, an Apple Watch, a laptop, a TV, nothing, no screens at all. I went from the 50th percentile of memory of men in America to the 99th percentile of memory for men in America.
We discussed the screen-free experiment that changed his brain and his life.
The longer I was without answers, the more I had to figure it out on my own.
All coming right up. Hey friend, if you didn't know, I started a newsletter a while back that comes out every 2 weeks. I've been delighted to hear from so many of you about positive response to the newsletter. We call it the No Small Endeavor Notebook, where I riff on themes and topics related to our podcast, giving you additional material for thinking and doing in your own quest to make sense of what it might mean to live a good life. Join us by going now to nosmallendeavor.com and sign up there. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com to sign up now for our free No Small Endeavor Notebook newsletter. I'm Lee C. Camp. This is No Small Endeavor, exploring what it means to live a good life.
That Sunday notification of shame. Every person that had a smartphone would get the notification that told you how many hours and minutes a day you're averaging on your phone. I would get it every Sunday. I just swipe it away. I didn't look at it.
That's author, speaker, and social media influencer Carlos Whittaker talking about the Sunday afternoon in 2022 that led to a new life experiment.
But it said I was averaging 7 hours and 23 minutes a day on my phone. And honestly, they didn't really bother me. When I first saw it, I was like, oh man, that's horrible. I should do better next week. But then I had the thought, well, let's do the math.
Carlos was gentle with himself. He rounded down, and he was stunned to discover that even his most conservative estimate meant that he was spending 49 hours a week on his phone.
Whoa, that's like 2 days of human existence a week out of 7 that I'm looking at 6 inches of LCD. That's crazy. Then I kept doing the math. It was about 100 days a year, which is sobering.
Yeah, 100 days of 24 hours a day.
Of 24 hours a day. So if we're just talking about awake time.
It's quite sobering.
And then, I kept doing some math that told me if I lived to be 82, it ended up being like 14 years of my life. And so that was like, I've got to change something.
Some people might install a timer or delete tempting apps from their phone, but Carlos' job is social media. He has a following of hundreds of thousands of folks in a community called the Insta Familia. Together, they've raised upwards of $2.6 million in charitable donations and have sponsored over 1,000 children living in poverty. He's been harnessing the power of social media to do good for over 15 years, and there was no way he could eliminate screens from his professional life. But something had to change, and that's when he made a decision to conduct an experiment.
I ended up moving in with 21 Benedictine monks in the high desert of Southern California at St. Andrew's Abbey for 2 weeks. Lived the full-on Benedictine monk life, okay? Then I flew to Holmes County, Ohio, and I moved on to an Amish sheep farm with an Amish family called the Millers and learned to sheep farm. And then I moved back home here to Nashville with my family for 3 weeks. The whole time, no screens. So I decided I'm not going to look at an iPhone, an Apple Watch, a laptop, a TV, nothing.
That experience became the inspiration for his newest book, Reconnected, how 7 screen-free weeks with monks and Amish farmers helped me recover the lost art of being human. And this was more than a purely social experiment.
Hi, Carlos. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. We are going to start the scan right now.
Scans of his brain before and after the 7-week reset showed some fascinating results as well.
Remember to stay as still as you can. Here we go.
Today we discuss what Carlos learned, how his life has changed since the experiment, and the screen habits he still has not been able to break. Here's my interview with Carlos Whittaker. Carlos Whittaker, welcome.
Well, here I am.
Here you are. Grateful to have you with us today.
Yeah.
So, I'm fascinated with this experiment you did recently in your book, Reconnected. I stopped using a cell phone like 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I love so much of what you've done in that book. But you tell this story about standing at the top of an escalator in the Atlanta airport.
Yes.
Would you recount that?
Yes. I was standing at the top of the escalator, and I can't remember if this was before or after this experiment, but I decided to count how many people coming up the escalator were looking at their phones. In my head, I was like, I don't know, probably half these people are going to be on their phones. Out of 100 people, it was 100 people that were staring at their screens coming up the escalator. It's a problem so much now that it's not even viewed as a problem. People have actually become comfortable with, 7 hours, it is what it is. And so it's like, how can I continue to help people realize there's better ways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you realize this about yourself, and then you decide to undertake an experiment.
I did. It was my wife's idea. It wasn't even mine. I knew a lot of people at this point in my life had done like social media fasts and things. I was like, no. I want to know what would happen if I just don't consume from a screen. To make it a little bit scientific, it was not a scientific experiment at all. I was the only lab rat, no other subjects. But I went and got my brain scanned by Dr. Daniel Amen. And he did a SPECT scan on my brain, but then also did about 2 hours of cognitive testing with me before and after the experiment. And so that was it. So I did 2 months of it, and whoa, was it transformative.
So before we talk about things you learned during the experiment, fast forward to what happened with the brain scan and before and after and what you learned.
So my cerebellum, which again, these are words I never said until I met Dr. Amen. You know, he studies a lot of traumatic brain injuries. He's seen a lot of brains. He said that he saw about 5 years of healing in my brain in 7 weeks. I don't necessarily know what he meant by that. There is a episode, 2 episodes actually with me on his YouTube channel. He gets a little bit more into the science there. So if people want to know a little bit more about that, they can do that. But this was the kicker. My cognitive memory score. So the 2 hours of testing with my cognitive memory was very simple. I would sit in front of a computer. They would flash 20 black and white faces in front of me. I would wait 5 minutes. They'd flash 40, and I'd have to hit a space bar when I recognized one of the faces and try to see numbers and letters. I'd have to remember sequences in a row. I went from the 50th percentile of memory of men in America to the 99th percentile of memory for men in America.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
It's pretty remarkable.
You fly to California.
I do.
What's this like showing up at the Benedictine monastery?
It was a 24-hour panic attack is what I like to call it. I'm going, I get on Instagram, I log off, I tell my Instagram followers, okay, goodbye. I don't know when I'm coming back or whatever. They don't know what I'm doing, by the way. I don't tell anybody. I land, my best friend Brian picks me up. I have In-N-Out. I'm like, I don't know what kind of monk food they eat, but let me have one final meal. He drops me off. We load carry all my bags up to my little cabin at the top of the hill. And he takes my backpack, my laptop, my iPad, my Apple Watch, my phone. He takes everything and he just drives away. I'll never forget that he just drove away and just left me there. And I remember thinking, wow, what do I do now? I mean, it was shocking the first 60 seconds because I immediately reached into my pocket and there was nothing there.
Yeah.
I realized, I do this all the time. And so I was a pretty rough first 48 hours, man, but day 3, it was like, I get it. I think this is what we were created to live like. It was pretty beautiful. Yeah.
What happened in day 3 that caught your attention that way?
Well, the first 2 days was legitimately, no exaggeration. I was having like heart palpitations, night sweats, felt like I had the flu. And Dr. Amen said, no, your brain was literally realigning and adjusting. And then day 3, I woke up and it felt like an elephant stepped off my chest. That's the only way I can describe it. I could breathe fully. I suddenly loved the rhythm of the monks. Everything was slow, 3 miles an hour. I started noticing things. It stopped being an experiment about a phone and started being an experiment about being human. And oh my gosh, everything tasted better. I mean, if you haven't eaten a meal without looking at your phone, you are robbing yourself of the full flavor of everything you're eating. The silence was loud. The meals were flavorful. The colors were bright. Oh, it was so good. I'm literally, as I'm talking right now, I'm like, I want to go back. It was what we were created to be. It was pretty powerful.
Your initial conversations with, I think his name was Father Patrick, what did they make of what you were up to?
Yeah, they were definitely inquisitive because they host retreats there. But they were like, nobody has ever stayed here this long. And what I think was a little surprising was I was trying to go somewhere where there were no phones. Little did I know that monks have phones. And so that was a little shocking. Father Patrick pulls out a phone in his pocket. Well, hold on, let me see what room you're in. Whoa, you're looking at a phone to find this?
Don't show it to me.
Monks have phones? I was going away from this. It was very powerful, the conversations I had with really Father Francis, who was a former abbot. So he was kind of the man in charge for a long time. And I'll tell you what, when you don't have access to immediate information and immediate answers about anything, but for me, it was about faith. Suddenly the questions about God began to get really big. And it was strange that I went to like a monastery, this place that you would just assume God is there fully. But I started to just feel this chasm, like this doubt begin to creep in. And I was so grateful that maybe I had a little bit of a deconstruction moment while I was with these monks. And I started being able to ask really big questions to them. It was a really powerful time of God, I think, getting bigger than getting smaller, as opposed to getting smaller. My view of God, my understanding, I think I used to have him in a pretty tight little box that fit really neatly. And the longer I was without answers, when I say that, answers from a device, podcasts to listen to, books to listen to, sermons to watch, the longer I was without those things, the more I had to figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
The monastery was the first place I realized I've forgotten how to wonder. And wondering was something I had to do nonstop. And so I wondered about God, about my relationship with my wife and my kids, and all sorts of things. It was beautiful. It was a struggle, but I'm grateful for it.
So you write a chapter on wonder. So describe that a little bit more for us as an intentional practice. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, I think obviously wonder has different meanings. I'm not necessarily talking about the wonder and the grandness of life as opposed to wondering.
Yeah.
We're literally the first generations of humans to walk the face of the earth that are able to not wonder about anything anymore. It's even not even accessible anymore, when we have these screens. So we're having a conversation, say we go to lunch, and you say the words, I wonder, and then you would say something after that. Well, immediately what most people would do now is grab their phones. Oh, you don't have to wonder. And we look it up, and ChatGPT or Google will kill our wonder. I call it the wonder killer. Well, when I was there, I remember the first thing I wondered about was the monks were walking in 2 by 2 into the chapel. They're chanting in Latin and they're walking really slow. And I had all these questions. Well, why do they walk in 2 by 2? And I remember reaching into my pocket. That was the first time I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? What am I going to do not knowing the answer to something I want an answer to for a long time? And I realized God was like, you're just going to have to wonder. And I was like, whoa. And so now I'm like the wonder police. Like if anyone says I wonder, I'm the one that's like, nope, we're not going to look it up. For 15 minutes, we're just going to wonder. People hate it. But I think at the end of it, they love it. Because I'm like, let's just wonder. Let's act like it's 1988 again.
Yeah.
We don't have access to information. Let's wonder. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Just as an aside, you've already mentioned twice reaching into your pocket.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the ways my experiment in not using a phone struck me as making me aware of how deeply wired all this is in us was that I had my last phantom buzz in my pocket 1 year after I had stopped using a phone.
Wow.
And I just couldn't get over it. Here it is still after a year. And just the way we're so constantly aware and wanting to not have any question and pause, but always have the input.
And the notifications, like that was one of the biggest changes. Because I'm back on my phone. I still have my phone now. So I've gone from 7 hours a day to 3 hours a day. So I've gained 4 hours of living back a day. But one thing that's helped is I no longer have notifications. My phone is on permanent do not disturb.
Yeah.
Because I realized for those 2 months, I never had a buzz in my pocket, a ding on my wrist. I was fully present with whoever I was with the whole time. And there were moments where, either Father Francis would get a notification in the middle of a conversation with me. Excuse me, son. He'd pick it up. And I was like, is the monk doing this to me? Is this what it feels like? He literally left where we were, went to an alternate universe for a moment, and then came back, And so, yeah, I've turned all my notifications off. Only my wife and my kids can get through to me, only if they text me twice. So the first text, they know I don't get a notification. If they text me right away afterwards, I get one. So same with phone calls. So they know that I'm still living that no notification life.
So, related to wondering there, you also talk about noticing and savoring. So unpack those for us.
I think that noticing and savoring can kind of go hand in hand. When you're savoring something, you're noticing things about it, right? And so what does it really truly mean to savor? We can get used to things and no longer savor them. And I use an example a lot where I was walking with my wife once I think we were in France, and there was a store with croissants. And they were baking croissants in there. And I remember we were getting close to the store, and we both were like, do you smell that? Oh my gosh, it smells amazing. And so we walked in, and it smelled so good. So then we got the croissant, and we got a coffee, and we were sitting there, and we were talking for like 15 minutes. And all of a sudden I realized I can't smell it anymore. The smell is gone. So do you know what I did? I said, in order to smell it again, I'm going to have to leave. So I walked out, came back, and I could smell it again. And so I think savoring is something that we have to practice and be intentional with, because we can get used to things that are wonderful. And so one of the things I do, again, to savor things, just my morning cup of coffee. I've made a decision ever since this experiment that I no longer take a coffee to go. I always drink my coffee out of a ceramic mug wherever I'm at, because what that's going to do is it's going to force me, if it's a ceramic mug, I'm going to spill it in the car if I try to take it. It's only going to be 4 minutes of sitting still. If we don't have 4 minutes to savor your cup of coffee first thing in the morning, then I think we're moving too fast.
Yeah.
So those are things that I try to implement into my day to allow me to savor things, to allow me to notice things. And again, there was a moment when at the monastery where I found a hummingbird that I never would have seen, a little baby hummingbird. I never would have seen this hummingbird had I been on my phone, but I saw this hummingbird and I nursed it for 3 days, tried to bring it back to life, and watched the mom finally came down and get it. This wonderful time with this little baby hummingbird. It was like my own Netflix show. And that never would have happened had I been on a screen. So again, noticing is falling by the wayside. Savoring. I tell people that you can also savor things before and after something happens. So remembering good times, I think all of these things we're missing out on because we're forgetting how intentionally savoring things is so good for us.
Yeah. That reminds me of years ago. This was before the prevalence of smartphones. But I remember one day walking across campus and seeing one of my favorite students, but he had earbuds in and was listening to something, and it was this beautiful spring day, and all the cherry trees were just in bloom, and it was just a gorgeous day. Yeah. So I stopped him and said hello, and I said, have you seen all that you're walking through? He said, what are you talking about? I said, just look. And he looked around and he said, oh my goodness, this is beautiful.
Yeah, totally.
And that's the way I feel like so much of the multiplicity of distractions that come at us. We just miss life, right?
It's so true. If you think about it, we're the only quote unquote animals that do savor. If I were to stick a honey baked ham in front of my Bernese Mountain Dog, there would be no savoring involved. He would devour it, right? And so it's like, he doesn't even have that part of his brain there, but we literally can savor things so slowly, I think it's important.
You're listening to No Small Endeavor and our conversation with Carlos Whittaker on his book, Reconnected. I do love hearing from you. Tell us what you're reading, who you're paying attention to, or send us feedback about today's episode. You can reach me at lee@nosmallendeavor.com. You can get show notes for this episode in your podcast app or wherever you listen. These notes include links to resources mentioned in this episode and a full transcript. We also have a free bi-weekly newsletter in which I riff on themes and behind-the-scenes goings-on called the NSC Notebook. You can subscribe to that newsletter for free by going to our website at nosmallendeavor.com/newsletter. Coming up, Carlos and I discuss his trek to Ohio to learn from the Millers, an Amish family. It has been so delightful to see more and more listeners like you sign up for NSC Plus. Our growing community is made up of intelligent and thoughtful people looking for a holistic approach to human flourishing. Signing up for NSC Plus is also a way to support the show and the work we're doing, and in fact, we depend upon that kind of support. But in addition to supporting the show, you'll get exclusive access to bonus content, and the No Small Endeavor you've come to love will be completely ad-free. In fact, you won't even hear ads like this one. So go to nosmallendeavor.com and click Join NSC Plus to become a member of our community today. Join for as little as $5 a month. Again, go to nosmallendeavor.com, click on that red button that says Join NSC Plus to become a member today. You used this word beholding a few times. How do you see the importance of beholding, and how is that different from what we've discussed already?
When you see the word behold in Scripture, it's always this grand announcement, behold, right? And so if an angel or something's going to say behold, then you better pay attention. There's something beautiful in front of you. And so I like to find what are the behold moments every single day. There are things to behold every single day. So one example I use a lot is Father Francis told me to go up on top of this mountain and behold. The storm was rolling in, and sure enough, it was this behold moment. It's, rolling in, the clouds rolling in. I was like, oh my gosh, God is huge. This is amazing. But then I came home and I was like, how do I behold things in my everyday Creve Hall, Nashville neighborhood? And I remember walking out my front door after it rained and seeing like a roly-poly. You ever seen these little roly-polies? And I remember playing with those when I was a kid. And so as like a 47-year-old man, I got down on my belly and I just started watching this thing. And I don't know, listeners, when the last time you looked at a roly-poly was. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, this is like this mini dinosaur encrusted in this hard shell with thousands of little feet. It looks like a little rhinoceros. And then I would touch it, and a human being could not draw a more perfect circle. That thing would roll up into a marble, and I'd flick it, it'd roll, and then after a second, it'd spread back out. My jaw was hanging on the floor, and I was beholding a roly-poly. And so I just think there's all sorts of stuff around us that we can behold every single day.
Yeah. That reminds me, there's a guy at Stanford who's done a huge amount of research on awe, Dacher.
Oh, wow. I got to look him up.
And yeah, he's just a remarkable guy. And one of the key things that he points to is just in wonder looking at the things that are around us, right?
Yes.
And if we just take the time to carefully, closely observe, it's incredible, all that is around us.
Incredible. I was, right before I came here, I'm decorating my front yard in Creve Hall, like I'm Clark Griswold, right? So like I've got the lights and the blow-ups and all these things, and I've got this 20-foot snowman, this 20-foot Rudolph. Well, I just put up the 20-foot.
I must say to those listening, I don't know when this interview is coming out, but we are a long way before Christmas.
Oh yeah, no, I need to let people know.
Yeah.
I start Halloween is Christmas season Eve for me, just so everyone knows. So I've got my snowman that I put up, my Frosty, I put him up last night. And as I'm putting it up, I live on a corner lot in Creve Hall, so a lot of traffic by my house. And sure enough, I just heard a car slow down, window roll down, and just the sound of this little voice in there going, "It's Frosty," right? And she was in awe. I mean, Frosty's huge to me. He's 20 feet tall, right? But she was in awe. She was in wonder. She was beholding Frosty. And I gave her a behold moment. Like, we need to find more of those in our lives.
Yes. Yeah. Learning to do nothing.
Oh.
What's that been like for you?
That was hard. I'm a learner. I'm curious. And so I love to, YouTube videos and podcasts. I want to learn. I actually even had to put a limit on, there was a used bookstore at the Abbey that I would go down, and I was like just pulling all kinds of books on the Big Bang and all sorts of things. I'm like, learn. And God was just like, no, just do nothing for a day. The Amish, they're the ones that really showed me how important it was to just stop, just rest, do nothing. And that's hard, especially in a culture and a society. I mean, if people are listening to your podcast, then they're learners. But I think every once in a while, we've got to get back to a place where we just stop, where there is silence, where we're not learning anything, where we're not going. One of the assignments that I give my human school participants is I have them go on a walk somewhere, find a bench, and sit there for 30 minutes and just do nothing. No podcasts, no journal, no book, just sit. It is the most difficult assignment that anybody has. The whole 8 weeks that I do this thing, because people just don't know how to do that anymore. Luckily for me, I've learned how important it is that I slow down. A lot of people will say, Carlos, life's speeding by us. Actually, I think we're the ones speeding by life.
You're there 2 weeks and then you fly to Ohio.
Yes, I land in Cleveland, Ohio. My friends Leanne and Daryl pick me up and then drive me to Mount Hope, Ohio, like the center of the largest Amish community in America, in Holmes County, Ohio. Move in with Willis, the sheep farmer. And let me tell you, it was whiplash, because if living with the monks was like living in a cave with David in the Psalms, moving into Mount Hope, Ohio, this tiny little horse and buggy town, was like moving to downtown Manhattan. I'm telling you, these Amish people, I was so exhausted by the end of the first day there, because they do so much. You know, the monks was like, be still and know that I'm God. 3 miles an hour, just sit. And the Amish, on the other hand, it was like, sun up, we go, we're farming, we're shearing sheep, we're going to the horse auction, we're, going here, going there, talking, meals are 2 hours long. Brrr. They just go.
Fascinating. I would not have anticipated that you would describe that way.
Yeah, very busy.
Intense work rhythms.
Yes. From the Amish, I learned a lot about community and what we've lost with screens and community.
Yeah.
All of our meals were 2 hours long, 2 hours plus. And I'm talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And day 3, I was like, Willis, how come you eat so long? And he's like, Carlos, we don't have Facebook. The only way I'm going to know what's going on in your life is sharing a meal with you. Some of the reasons why they don't have screens, it's not like they're anti-tech or anti-screen. They just know they have made, at least again, the order of Amish that I was with, which is the largest order in America, every new piece of technology that comes in, or they have a question about, they make a decision whether they're going to allow that piece of technology into their community by asking 2 questions. Will this piece of technology bring us closer together or pull us farther apart? That's it. And so they're like, that's why we're never going to have TVs, because they're going to take us farther apart. That's why we're never going to have cars, because if somebody's in need, we will never be too far away to help each other. Whereas if we had cars, I could be in Cleveland, Miss Betty's barn burns down. It's going to take me hours to get to her. Now it's going to take me minutes. So those are a lot of the things that I was learning about community from the Amish that, again, I've implemented a lot of those things into my life.
Yeah. Other kind of observations about the way they do community that's made possible by not having such indebtedness to technology?
Yeah. It actually was very sobering to see how even the Amish are having to make exceptions with technology in order to maintain their way of living. They used to just be farmers, and that was the rule. You have to farm by horse. Well, what happened? More corporate farmers started to come in, and suddenly they could no longer support their community by just farming. So they're continuing to evolve. Willis told me, he's like, I think in the next 5 years, we're going to have to go to tractors because we're just not going to be able to do it. So I think what I loved about them is they are just doing as much as they can to conserve the old way of life that has kept them close together. But they still have to make decisions to release some of that every once in a while. They're like, we just always want to be like 100 years behind. One of the things that I appreciate about the Amish in their Sunday services, so I got invited to go to church with the Amish, which was really fascinating. They were like, we haven't had a non-Amish person in our church in like 20 years. So they're not very evangelical. They're not going out and trying to turn people Amish. And also, I didn't understand it because it's all in Pennsylvania Dutch, right? So they're speaking a different language. But one of the things that was cool about how they do their faith gatherings is they don't have big church buildings. They meet in each other's barns. So every Sunday, they have a pew and a hymnal buggy that gets pulled by a horse to the next person's barn that they're going to meet in. And then all of those pews get set up in the barn, and then all the hymnals get set out, and then everyone goes from house to house. I love that.
I've so often heard Amish folks just dismissed out of hand and painted as this kind of legalistic people. And it's like, well, obviously they believe in technology because they're using all sorts of technology, right? But those questions that you asked, what is this adoption of the next technological artifact?
Yes.
What's that going to do to our community?
Yes.
What kind of people are we going to become
Yes.
if we do that? That's the question, right?
That's the question.
And that's the beautiful question that we all can adopt. We can all ask ourselves questions about, if we bring this into our lives, how's it going to shape my character? What kind of person am I going to become?
And think about that with every app you put on your phone.
Yeah.
It's so important. Great example. I was very surprised that I saw so many Amish people on e-bikes riding around.
E-bikes.
E-bikes. Zipping around on their e-bikes. And I was like, wait a second, what's going on? And they're like, Willis was like, hey, listen, this is cool. An e-bike, the battery is only going to last about as far as a horse and buggy can take us. So the church realized e-bikes are more efficient, but also they're not going to take us too far away from each other like a gas-powered something would.
Yeah.
So when you go to the auction in Holmes County, Ohio, you will see 50% less horse and buggies and tons of e-bikes all there. And so you'll see Amish on e-bikes zipping around everywhere. But that, again, was a decision they made. That piece of technology is not pulling them farther apart, is not taking them farther from who they want to be. They just want to make sure they stay together in community.
Right, yeah.
Pretty cool.
Did you have any conversations with him about, my understanding is that when young men, and maybe young women as well, I suppose, hit 18, that they kind of have a year or more sowing their wild oats to decide what would you learn about that?
Yeah, no, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing.
Carlos and I here are discussing Rumspringa, a word that literally is translated to run around. It actually begins around age 16, and it's a rite of passage in some Amish communities during which adolescents are given greater freedom to explore the outside world before deciding whether to be baptized into the community.
So we'd sit every night on their little porch. We would hear sometimes horse and buggies would come by with like boom boxes in the back. This is not an exaggeration. So one time, the horse and buggy comes by and had like Jay-Z playing in the back. And they're like, oh, he's in his year of sowing his oats or whatever. And so that was pretty cool. Even my friends that picked me up from the airport, Daryl and Leanne, Daryl is former Amish, which is how I got into this community. Okay. During his year of sowing his wild oats, he met Leanne. When she was, I guess, 19, her dad hired an Amish man and his son to come do something with the fireplace. Daryl was his son, and he was sowing his quote-unquote wild oats in that season, met Leanne, walked in, they locked eyes, fell in love, and he's like, I'm not going to be Amish anymore because I want to marry her. And so yeah, a lot of the Amish, do that. But this is also something else that I want to let people know. I think we also hear about like Amish shun. You're not allowed back in. That is not what I saw when I was in that community. Just the family I was with. You got Christina. She's Mennonite. She left the Amish church, and she's the daughter of Willis and Kathy, the Amish farmers. But she lived on the farm with them, had a car, and just lived in a separate little building. And they were super close. And then Tim, their other son, is also Mennonite. But then Kathy, their daughter, is Amish. And so they still hang out every day. They still have meals together. And so one thing Willis would tell me is, because I did ask him, are you sad that 2 of your kids decided to not be Amish anymore after sowing their wild oats? He's like, yeah, I'm sad, but I still love them. They're still family. And so I just thought that was beautiful too.
Coming up is a short break, then the day that Carlos drove a team of horses. You had an incident that wasn't so successful driving a hayraker.
Yeah. The rake. Willis let me be in charge of steering the 4 horses. And I've got video evidence. I literally, so I didn't have any phones with me, but I did have my GoPro camera. And just imagine for a moment, Willis was like, okay, I want you to do it. He taught me for maybe it was like 7 days. He's teaching me. Finally, he trusts me enough to give me the reins. And so I was like, well, here, take the GoPro. So imagine this Amish man with his big Amish hat and his big beard chasing me through a field as I've got his horses going a little too fast. He's like, Carlos, he's running through the field with this GoPro in his hand. I went a little crooked, and so I looked behind me. I was like, okay, I didn't do that very well. So I'm definitely not meant to be an Amish sheep farmer, but that was fun.
You talk about their practices of non-resistance and forgiveness. What did you see with that?
Oh, yeah. There's been some mass killings and stuff that have happened in schoolhouses with the Amish. And the way that they all decided to forgive the killer, that's a big version, right? But this goes down to a small scale. The way that they choose forgiveness, it was not only inspiring, but I think it was a little bit shocking to me too. I didn't necessarily have any moments where that happened to me, but a lot of the stories that they told were pretty powerful, and I think that's something we can learn from them as well.
Yeah, you say at one point, choosing to live unoffended does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means refusing to let bitterness be the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
Every time we stay unoffended, we punch a hole in the algorithm that profits from our rage.
Yeah.
Prior to this, you don't strike me as someone who typically gets enraged or social media anger.
Yeah.
So that wasn't something that you were having to detox from.
No, it wasn't. But it's funny. I was just talking to my wife the other day about this because my therapist asks me every week, like scale of 1 to 10, gives me like the 6 things that we're dealing with. And then anger was one he never asks me, but he did. And I was like, oh, it's a 0. And he's like, well, why is that a 0? I was like, well, I never get angry. Typical therapist. Well, why don't you ever get angry? Right. And then we started digging. I was like, actually, you know what? I do get angry when I'm in the car, if someone cuts me off. Sometimes I'll find myself slamming on the gas to like catch up with, I was like, what am I doing? And my wife told me that too. She's like, Carlos, you do get angry when you're doing that. And so, I think that there is a bit of beauty in some righteous anger that I think I would even see that in the Amish as well. But for me, that's something that, I am digging in a little bit to go, okay, why don't I get angry?
What's your answer to that?
I don't have an answer yet. The therapy session was only 2 weeks ago, but I do think that I've been doing a lot of healing work this year. There's been a lot of death in my life, my father, my wife's mother, and I think that there has been so much that has been linked back to little 5-year-old Carlos. I would say almost all the healing that's happened in my life was brought back to a moment where I wasn't allowed to be angry when I was a little kid. And so I just stopped. It literally was like shutting off the volume pedal on a guitar back in 1979. I think I'm learning how to turn that back on in a lot of areas. So I just think that there's something to be said about our childhood, about who we were molded and crafted to be. We are the delay pedal now as adults of what was stepped on back when we were little. Yeah.
So are you suspecting that you suppressed anger all those years?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely suppressed it. There's been a lot of like healing in my marriage. Even this last year, we've been married 25 years. So we go back to 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, and I look back at behaviors or look back at addictions. All of these things, literally all of them, can be traced back to like moments in childhood. And not to blame childhood for all of your actions as adults, but to be able to find the root. There's just been such deep breaths that have happened in my life and in my marriage and all sorts of things this year that I think have happened because of the hard work that has been done for me in therapy this year. But also, I'm going to liken this back to my book, Reconnected. I feel that when we reconnect back to who we were as little kids, when we give ourselves the space off the screens, when we give ourselves the availability to go back and do these things, I believe that there's a reconnection that so many people are missing just with the fullness of life.
Yeah.
Like I literally have never had a better life than I have right now. And I think it's because of all the purposeful reconnection I've done this year.
And it sounds like reconnecting with your own self, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
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 That reminds me of years ago when I was doing some 12-step work and somebody was leading me through that. And then we got to doing the 4th and the 5th step where you make an inventory of all of your resentments and things you're angry about. And I remember thinking, I'm not angry about anything. And then I started doing the exercise and I thought, oh, hell, I'm angry about everything.
I know. Isn't it crazy?
And yet just I had this sort of utter lack of awareness and the so much energy that I was apparently suppressing. It always comes out sideways some way.
It always comes out sideways somewhere.
Yeah. So when you think back, what are some of the big takeaways for you about what you learned about yourself out of that experiment? I
definitely learned that I think my identity was based a lot in what people thought of me. There was a lot of performance going on. When you're hanging out with monks and Amish that have no idea who you are, they're not on social media, I suddenly had to be Carlos. And I suddenly had to stop trying to impress and just be me. And I think that was really helpful. I think also there's a lot of research done already. I think there's going to be a lot more that come out in the next decade of what the damage that's actually happening in our brains. And so I've purposely cut that back. I think that's helpful. Something else that I've learned about myself is I was never fully present, ever. And so I think I was uncomfortable with eye contact. Honestly, I was uncomfortable with eye contact in the mirror with myself. That was one thing I learned as well. Studies show that even one buzz in your pocket, even if nobody else knows it buzzed, is going to take you away for 18 seconds out of the current present conversation that you're in. One of the things that has been really powerful for me this year that I learned from some of the monks is the difference in punishment and how we punish. One of the monks would tell me that, Carlos, like, Christians love to punish each other. We love to punish each other. We love to punish ourselves. But true transformation doesn't come from punishment. It comes from power. But even in my parenting now with my son, when I came back, this was crazy, transformational. I stopped punishing him if he did something, taking his phone. Because what does that do? It does nothing. Instead, I would give him power and say, actually, Losiah, you're in charge. You're actually in charge of the future. Because there is a consequence for your actions. So I think he came home late and I took his phone. I said, give me your phone. I need your phone. Then he came to me and he apologized. He's like, Dad, I'm sorry I was late. I was like, okay, why? And then he's like, well, I don't know, because I should have been home at 10. Okay, why? I started asking why. And he would get frustrated at the beginning when I started doing this. But what I wanted to do is give him the power. So finally, ultimately, he's like, well, I don't know, because I'm supposed to listen to my dad. Why? He's like, he was getting so mad. He's like, well, because you love me. Ah, yes. Why? And he got all the way down. It took 40 minutes of him getting so frustrated. And he goes, because I think what happened is you love me so much and I don't understand how much you love me and it hurts you. That I literally grabbed his phone and I said, there you go. It's yours. He thought I was going to keep his phone for 2 weeks. I was like, no. I wanted to give you the power to find out what it is. What was the point? What was the pain point there? Well, everything in my life has turned into that. Ever since this punishment versus power thing with these monks, getting over the punishment paradigm, that's been truly transformative for me this year as well.
What have you not done as well as you might hope following the experiment?
I think I've done the easy stuff well, bought an alarm clock, charged my phone in another room, subscribed to a newspaper, deleted all the news apps off my phone. I got the Tennessean on my front porch every morning, just like leave it to Beaver. But what I haven't done well, I think, is maintaining the wonder in my relationship with my family. My daughter, during those 3 weeks I lived at home with no screens, said, this is the purest version of a dad I've ever had. Whoa. They've lost that. Pure dad's gone again. I find myself, even last night, like in bed scrolling, my wife's scrolling too. And I'm like, what am I doing? But I think I've just lost some of the intensity of how beautiful it was to be screen free. One other thing that I used to do that I no longer do is when I'm traveling, I still would always not have a screen when I ate. But I found myself doing that again. I want to get back because there were some beautiful, beautiful conversations I had, people that I met when I'd be on the road and just eating. It's a strange thing to eat in a restaurant with no screen if you're by yourself. I'm just looking at people. You know, I don't want to look down. People are like, well, this is awkward. Do you need something? I'll say, no. So I could probably do better at that as well.
Yeah. You told me before we started taping, you just finished a new book.
I did.
Yeah. What's that about?
It's coming out next year. And I have so many friends of mine that are my age, 10 years younger, 10 years older, that have worked. They're super successful. They've followed the plan. They've done all the things. They've accomplished everything. And they're looking around going, well, what else is there? Why am I not fulfilled? So the book is called Burn the Blueprint. And I'm helping people trade blueprint living for a compass and build a compass instead, finding true north. And so I just think that we're a society that post-World War II, suburbs, white picket fence, 2 kids, dog, and it just isn't fulfilling.
Your first book on being human here on Reconnected, and then this one on finding a compass, those are all questions about what it means to be human. What I'm curious about is why your particular life has led you to asking all of those kinds of questions.
Well, that's a good question. Like my dad used to always say, Carlitos, gaze at God and glance at life. That's what he would say. Gaze at God and glance at life. And I think I lived in this space of gazing at life forever and just glancing up. So I would gaze down and glance up. And he was like, no, you got it wrong. Gaze up and glance down. When I started to implement that in my life, I realized how truly magical this life is that we get to live. And I just wasted far too many years just, I don't know, man, numb and just kind of going from one year to the next, to the next, to the next. And I'm like, no, like we were created for so much purpose and so much good. Every single person. I was in South Africa last week with heroin addicts on the street that were literally being given needles so that they didn't get HIV. And it was this crazy harm reduction program. And I looked at this addict on the street and he looked at me and we're having this moment. I'm looking at him and he's tearing up. I was like, why are you crying? He said, because you're looking at me. You see me. And suddenly like he had purpose. I just want everybody to feel the fullness of the purpose of life. We all have this incredible moment. If you're listening to this podcast, you have breath in your lungs, you can experience something grand today. May it be a roly-poly on the sidewalk. May it be a thunderhead showing up in the distance. May it be a conversation of reconciliation with somebody that you've been bitter with for a long time. There's all these beautiful moments in front of us. And I feel like God's put it inside of me to help people find those things. So however I can help.
Yeah. Been talking to Carlos Whittaker. Thank you, Carlos, for the lovely conversation and the grand experiments you're doing in life.
There we go.
Yeah.
I love it.
Here's one small closing take on today's interview with Carlos Whittaker. Carlos gave us a great host of helpful practices and practical wisdom. First, the challenging work of taking an honest assessment of our own lives. The most obvious example to me in the conversation with Carlos is the way many of us, I suspect, sense that screens aren't good for us, but we just shrug, swipe the screen time notification away, and keep going. What if instead, when our intuition or our experience, heck, even our phones, tell us something about ourselves, perhaps we pause and consider whether this indicates the sort of human being we really want to be? And then, what if we have the courage to act upon what we learn about ourselves? Second, I continue to be fascinated with the questions Carlos's Amish hosts raise, to ask, will this piece of technology bring us closer together or pull us farther apart? This is a simple but far-reaching and potentially profound question to ask about our technology, our apps, and our devices. Third, the bundle of practices around attention, wondering, noticing, savoring, beholding. Carlos named the phone as the wonder killer. And he contrasts that with beholding a storm from a mountain, or then a tiny roly-poly in his Nashville yard. He said, there are things to behold every single day. This is not mere sentimentality. It is, I think, instead a discipline of retraining ourselves to see in a way that might make life rich and that embraces the reality of the abundance of life all around us. Last, the invitation to being unoffended. Carlos's line from his book bears repeating. Choosing to live unoffended does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means refusing to let bitterness be the loudest voice in the room. Every time we stay unoffended, we punch a hole in the algorithm that profits from our rage. That's a small, but not so small take on today's episode. Peace to you, my friend. You've been listening to No Small Endeavor and our interview with Carlos Whittaker on his book Reconnected, How 7 Screen-Free Weeks with Monks and Amish Farmers Helped Me Recover the Lost Art of Being Human. We gratefully acknowledge the support of Lilly Endowment Incorporated, a private philanthropic foundation supporting the causes of community development, education, and religion. Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this show possible. Christy Bragg, Jacob Lewis, Carrie Harmon, Jason Cheesley, Sophie Byard, Kate Hayes, Mary Evelyn Brown, and Audrey Griffith. Our theme song was composed by Tim Lauer. Thanks for listening, and let's keep exploring what it means to live a good life together. No Small Endeavor is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studios.